I don't know what pulled me to that lighthouse. It stood like a broken sentinel at the edge of the world, its towering silhouette etched against the restless ocean. The locals called it Mariner's Grave. They said it had been abandoned for decades, after a string of tragic incidents no one cared to elaborate on. A lighthouse meant to save lives but cursed to take them instead. That's how old Mr. Hargrove at the inn had described it. But curses? Ghost stories? They never really scared me. Maybe that's why I was there that night, flashlight in hand, boots crunching against the gravel path leading to the cliffside. Or maybe I just wanted to prove something to myself, that the strange dreams I'd been having about this place were nothing more than the work of an overactive imagination. The wind was fierce, howling like some wounded beast, and the waves below crashed violently against jagged rocks. Each step closer to the lighthouse made my chest tighten, but I wasn't about to turn back. The towering iron gate creaked on its hinges as I pushed it open. The sound was deafening, and for a moment it felt as if the world itself had paused to listen. The path leading up to the door was overgrown, littered with broken glass and scraps of metal. A forgotten world. The lighthouse loomed larger now, its windows dark and lifeless, like blind eyes staring out into the void. The door was unlocked, as if it had been waiting for me. I stepped inside, the air immediately colder than it should have been. My flashlight's beam cut through the darkness, revealing a room thick with dust and decay. Old maritime tools hung on the walls, rusted and useless. A table in the center of the room bore a strange symbol carved into its surface, one I couldn't recognize. I tried to ignore the unease creeping up my spine and focused on the faint sound I could hear, like whispers carried on the wind. They seemed to echo from the staircase winding up the tower. The rational part of me said it was just the wind. The irrational part said it was something else entirely. As I approached the stairs, I caught sight of something glinting on the floor. A brass key, polished and pristine, as if it had been placed there just moments ago. My hand trembled as I picked it up. That's when I noticed the faint smell of seawater, sharp and salty, even though the air inside was stale. A sudden thud echoed against every instinct screaming at me to leave. I knelt and pried it open. The hinges screeched in protest, revealing a dark, narrow shaft descending into the bowels of the lighthouse. The stench of brine and decay rose in a suffocating wave, and for a moment I thought I saw movement below, shadows shifting where no light could reach. A voice whispered my name. I stumbled back, nearly dropping the flashlight. It was impossible, but I'd heard it as clearly as if someone had spoken directly into my ear. My name, carried on the wind in a voice I didn't recognize. I slammed the trapdoor shut and scrambled to my feet, my chest heaving. The lighthouse was alive with sound now. Whispers, footsteps, and the faint tolling of a bell. Though no bell existed here. The staircase above seemed to stretch endlessly, but I forced myself to climb. My fingers brushed the cold, crumbling wall for support as I ascended, the sense of being watched growing unbearable. When I reached the second landing, the temperature dropped so sharply that my breath misted in the air. This room was almost empty, save for a single chair placed at the center. On it sat an oil lamp, its flame flickering weakly. The room shouldn't have had any light. I stepped closer, my footsteps muffled by a thin layer of sand coating the floor. As I reached for the lamp, I noticed something carved into the wall behind it. Another symbol, identical to the one I'd seen on the table downstairs. The moment my fingers touched the lamp, it went out. Darkness swallowed me whole, and in that suffocating void, I heard them. Voices all around me, speaking in unison. They weren't whispers anymore. They were shouting, screaming, words I couldn't understand, but their anger was clear. Something brushed against my arm, cold, clammy, and unmistakably real. I stumbled backward, my flashlight flickering weakly back to life, illuminating the room for a brief second. That's when I saw it. A figure stood in the corner, shrouded in shadow, its outline barely human. The figure tilted its head as if considering my question. Then it stepped aside, revealing an old weathered journal on a pedestal. The pedestal was positioned at the edge of the circle, as though the book was some kind of offering. "Read," it commanded. I hesitated, but the shadows pressed closer, their faint moans reverberating in my ears. With no other choice, I approached the journal. My hands shook as I opened it, the brittle pages crackling under my fingers. The handwriting was barely legible, scrawled in frantic, uneven lines. It was a diary, Elias Caro's diary, the last lighthouse keeper. His words told a story of isolation, paranoia, and something far worse. He had discovered the symbol, just as I had, and he believed it was a seal, a barrier holding back something ancient and malevolent. Over time, he began hearing voices, seeing shadows, and eventually, he succumbed to the thing inside the lighthouse. His final entry was a single chilling sentence: "The seal is breaking." As I read those words, the room began to tremble. The symbol on the floor glowed faintly, pulsating like a heartbeat. The shadows closed in, and the creature let out a guttural laugh, its grin widening impossibly. "You've done well," it hissed. What do you mean?" I stammered, backing away from the journal. The figure gestured to the glowing symbol. "You've fed it. Your fear, your presence. It's enough. The seal will shatter, and we will be free." "No," I shouted, but it was too late. The floor beneath the symbol cracked, splitting open to reveal a swirling void of darkness. The whispers turned into screams, and a cold wind howled through the room, pulling at my clothes and hair. I clung to the light mechanism, struggling to keep my balance as the void expanded, swallowing the shadows one by one. The creature's laughter echoed in my ears, even as it was dragged into the abyss. A chill ran down my spine as the air in the room grew colder, the lights flickering overhead. I turned toward the window, and there it was, its hollow eyes staring back at me through the glass. That same jagged grin stretched across its face. My scream caught in my throat as the lights went out completely, plunging the room into darkness. And then, just before the silence consumed everything, I heard it whisper my name again.